Welcome to the Respectful Divorce Podcast. If you're considering divorce, it's important to know that you have options for how you divorce. On the Respectful Divorce Podcast, we explore those options and provide advice from divorce professionals. I'm your host, Tim Crouch, and today we're talking with members of the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network. Joining us today are collaborative attorneys Ashley-Nicole Russell, Robin Mermans, and Ashley Michael. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, Tim.
How or why did you get involved in family law and divorce work? And Robin, why don't you start?
Thanks, Tim, and thanks again for having us. So my story is pretty simple. About 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I went through my own divorce. At the time, I was working for a Fortune 100 company in their legal department, but I was not an attorney. And I went through the process, and my now was-been hired an attorney, like the traditional process, and I hired an attorney. And 6 months later and several thousands of dollars, we had nothing to show for it. It created more animosity and contention and conflict rather than guiding us towards resolution and finding common ground and problem-solving techniques. We ultimately ended up in my garage with a calculator and pad of paper. And once we learned enough from the process and really what it is that we needed to decide, we did it on our own in our garage and then handed those terms to our attorneys to then draft an agreement. But it was after that, shortly, that I said there was a better way to do this. This is a racket, frankly. I'm like, we're billable hours. There's no incentive for them to bring us to closure. There's got to be a better way. And at the time, mediation was just starting to bubble, but really wasn't in the mainstream yet. And I did some research, and I actually resigned from my position at the Fortune 100 company and started a divorce mediation business. I went and got my mediation certification in North Carolina. And then I did that for a year, and I realized I was dangerously close to unlawful practice of law, so I went to law school. But net is I went through my own divorce, and I instinctively knew there was a better way to do this. Right. So that's why I ended up in family law.
Yeah. Ashley-Nicole, what about you? How'd you end up in family law?
I have had a really cool journey with family law, actually. It's been a lot of lemons into lemonade type of scenario for me in bringing kind of my childhood full circle. And so my parents had a pretty rough divorce whenever I was young that bled through my whole life, every graduation, everything. And when I was in law school, I was made aware of collaborative family law, and I actually was able to do an internship. I was probably one of the first interns ever to be able to do or be exposed to collaborative family law, and it was very new and had just really started. And I was able to get a lot of really beautiful exposure, and I knew that that would have really resolved a lot of the problems in my own childhood, and I became pretty dedicated to making sure that I could bring that message forward as much as possible in the state of North Carolina and all over the country. And I had been a certified mediator while I was in college at Appalachian State University, and so I was very in love with alternative dispute resolution processes, and I felt like collaborative was, just the epitome of how to be able to divorce respectfully in a very efficient manner, to be able to, control the cost of it, which is a big, important piece, and additionally control the emotional cost of it, which is an even more gigantic piece of it. And so it became my mission to change divorce in America. And so that's how I found family law. And I'd always been a part of collaborative family law, never the litigation, always very much moving the ball towards alternative dispute resolution.
And Ashley, the same question to you. How did you end up in family law?
Sure. I'm kind of a non-traditional attorney being in the area of law because my parents are still married. They've been married for over 50 years. I have my firm, Michael and Russell, we are a collaborative divorce and adoption firm. So our mission is geared towards alternative dispute resolution cases, and adoptions, I tend to enjoy teaching my clients about the law. I probably could have been a project manager or educator or social worker in another life. So I enjoy the creativity of family law. I can't stand to waste time, energy, or money. And after over a decade of working in other firms and seeing that billable hour be more of a mission or a driving force of litigation and the degradation of families, just knew that there was a better way to do things. I love the problem solving and creativity of family law, and in law school, in practicums or classes where we learned about different areas of law, just knew that I was drawn to helping others, and just found my niche and was able to feel that I could help families, help the community, and just became drawn to what I get to do. And I love it and I enjoy it, and I feel like I can lay my head down at night feeling that I help others. So I've stuck with it.
So Robin and Ashley-Nicole both had these experiences with divorce that maybe they went to law school to become family law attorneys. Did you go to law school to become a family law attorney, or were you thinking you'd be somewhere else?
No, I didn't. I just knew I needed to be challenged. I knew I wanted to work for myself, be in control of the outcomes of my business. And I actually spent 5 years in between college and law school. I come from either a family of lawyers or educators. So I had that behind me as far as seeing my family or my parents work in those industries. So I knew I had some of those attributes. I didn't know what area of law I wanted to do, but in law school, in the last, say, 20 years, you have to have hands-on experience in different areas of law. And internships are something that law schools want to delve into now. Not 50 years ago, not even 40 years ago, but it's healthier if you can know at least some area of law that you're interested in before you open up your shingle, if you don't join a firm and they tell you what you're going to do.
Ashley-Nicole, why does this process work? Why does the collaborative divorce process work?
It's such a beautiful process because of the transparency. I think, so many people that are going through divorce just assume the other side is out to get them and hide the ball, and that their attorney's out to get them. And they're just so used to the culture of divorce, which is why I wrote the book, The Cure for Divorce Culture. They just assume it's a warlike culture. And if we could break that down and people understand and see, which is what we're trying to do in Flipping the Lake, of people understanding that divorce doesn't have to automatically mean that. It can mean collaborative divorce first. We can think amicable first. But most people just assume it's going to be the other way. And so it can be very difficult because of that. And collaborative solves that because of the transparency. Everything's on the table. No one's hiding the ball. You're not hiding the ball. Everyone's committed to a settlement. You're under a contract that's going to allow you to be open and exchange that information and not feel like you're going to be attacked or that it's going to be used against you. Litigation is a bear. It is an extreme bear. And anybody who's had full experience with it, either personally or as an attorney, understands it. And collaborative just solves just so many of the problems that litigation has. It's a very beautifully evolved process.
Yeah, and Robin, sometimes it involves bringing some neutrals into the process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So to sort of piggyback on your question to Ashley-Nicole, who answered beautifully, I would also add that I think it's the professionals. Like, it works because you have trained professionals like Ashley-Nicole Russell, and myself, and a handful of others that are really committed to this process, including neutrals, which are critically important, I think, I believe and know in the collaborative process. we bring in financial, if there's a tension with finances, it's not the two attorneys against each other. We bring in a financial neutral to have that extra voice in the room that's not representing either party. And that really tends to equalize those conversations and provides a more neutral forum. Same thing with child custody. Recently, I had a case where a mom, she's a great mom, she's been a stay-at-home mom, but wanted full custody continued, and dad was not interested in that. He wanted more time with the children, and he was a little less organized than she was, but she was convinced that, he couldn't handle it. And rather than the two attorneys fighting it out and me elevating my client and putting their client down, we were like, let's bring in a financial neutral that can meet with both of them. A lot of divorce is psychology. It's law, but a lot of it is psychology and dealing with emotions. And we're not professionals in that category, right? And so we bring in people that can help neutralize the forum that within which we're working. So that's why I think it works, and that's why I think neutrals are important.
Yeah, and that mental health professional or communications coach is bringing a really special skill set into the room, recognizing some things that maybe nobody else would recognize that are occurring. Am I correct in saying that?
100%. And yeah, Ashley-Nicole, Ashley-Michael, you feel free to chime in, but 100%. There are cases that I am convinced would not have settled without a divorce coach involved because of the emotions. And frankly, attorneys are expensive, right? And that's not they're not paying for us to be coaches or psychologists. So the coach is and they're trained to deal with the conflict and the emotions, and sometimes it's just time people need to process. So yes, I think they're critically important. Not in every case. You don't need them in every case, but those cases that do need them, they're critically important.
Yeah. Ashley-Michael, can you sort of describe how the collaborative process works and flows? What are the requirements that occur in a collaborative case, and how do you get to the finish line?
Well, first I want to hone in on something that both of my colleagues have said, and it's you have to start with trained professionals. So we're all attorneys first and foremost, but you can't have a family law attorney sit down and have a collaborative case with another family law attorney across the table that is not trained in our collaborative methods. Because while I might be in court on a Monday for a contested custody case, if my colleague who is sitting across the table from me with the father and I'm representing the mother, we're in a room together sitting mere inches or feet apart, and we're talking about some very difficult things. And attorneys, we come out of law school and we're trained to be zealous advocates. We are not trained to be nice and friendly and amicable when we are arguing our client's case. But collaborative, our rules and our laws, we are bound in what's called a paradigm shift. And so our communication skills are totally different than my colleague that I had in court on Monday, and how we talk to each other and how we share our information, when we do what we do in the collaborative process. And that paradigm shift is difficult for an attorney that has spent 20 years in the courtroom, or doesn't mediate cases, doesn't understand or like settlement negotiations. So first and foremost, to have a collaborative case, you have to be trained in settlement negotiations. And it's not just mediation. Many people get confused and think that a collaborative attorney is a mediator. We are not. A lot of us are trained in mediation, which is a week-long class, and mediators are governed by the North Carolina Dispute Resolution Commission, and we have to keep up our license and our skills, just like attorneys do. But before we can even get into the collaborative process, we have to be trained, and we have to continue that education, hone those skills, work with other like-minded professionals. So, to go into the process, we have to start with a contract. We have to start with what we call a pledge, which is what Ashley-Nicole was talking about. Part of our laws do govern our process. So if we have signed, we meaning attorney, husband, wife, or mom and dad, signing a contract that is binding us to a legally governed process, it is obligating the parties to do certain things at certain times, to provide documents, to agree on when to meet, to agree on if we are bringing in other neutral parties, to agree on when our next session is going to be, what areas of law we're going to cover. And that starts to ground us in our process, and that it is going to be voluntary, but also protect us from our court system and from litigation. That way, none of the parties nor the attorneys are getting to threaten litigation, getting to fear that we are going to be pulled into a lawsuit. It also keeps the process to be one where it is confidential and we can freely negotiate.
Yeah. And I think one of the important elements, Ashley-Nicole, is that the only people who make the decisions are the clients. Right. They're not told what to do. They ultimately are the ones who decide what this settlement's going to look like, right?
They really get the buy-in. They have so much more power and control. Attorneys in a lawsuit really can overstep their client's role. While attorneys should be educators, attorneys should be advisors, attorneys can certainly be guides in the process, but attorneys should never make decisions for their clients. So really, in the collaborative process, we are so much more leaders and modelers of the process. We help to give our clients communication skills. We help to model and affirm how those clients can continue to speak with each other in co-parenting after we leave the collaborative process and the table. So we're really helping to lay a foundation for so much more that continues after that collaborative and legal process has ended.
Yeah. Ashley-Nicole, through the years that you've done this, how have you seen it make a difference in your clients' lives when they've gone through the collaborative process versus if they had gone down the litigation route?
Wow. I mean, I kind of wrote the book on that. I think that is, it's an incredible juxtaposition of what the future life of that child is going to look like and what the future life of that family is going to look like. I think all of us are in this because we've seen that there is a better way, like Robin said, that it does not have to be the chaos that ensues that is really pushed by litigation. Litigation in and of itself is a very chaotic process. And so, it doesn't have to be that way, not in any way, shape, or form. And the chaos that comes on the other side of it when it's over is really what you're trying to avoid. And out of collaborative, that's not there. You set up the container throughout the process. You have respectful communication during the process that's being modeled to you by the two attorneys. Just an environment of modeling just by and of itself is how humans learn. We do that with an airplane to the mouth when we're teaching our children how to eat. It is a very similar way that we do that whenever we're modeling appropriate, respectful behavior during a divorce process for our clients. When they've seen on TV that it's okay for Jerry Springer to be the norm in your life every day and in front of your children, and that's okay, you get some sort of pass to do that because you're getting divorced. No, we have to model for them. There is a better way. You can level up to a higher self. You can level up to a higher process. This process is that. And the result, to answer your question, is on the other side of it, you have a calmer process. You have a calmer result. You have a more lasting result. Your family is still intact. There's not the shattered effect that happens because the family just wasn't meant to be pushed into the civil litigation system. It wasn't designed that way initially. And so those effects are removed. And we see co-parents. We see them sitting on the same side of the ball field at the park together. Out of the collaborative process, we see step parents being able to talk to the bio parents, being able to talk to each other and be at the birthday parties and have successful graduations. Whereas my life, for example, was a disaster at every graduation. Anytime everyone was required to be around each other. We can manage in our agreements all day long exactly what you're going to do on Christmas and Thanksgiving and for the 4th of July and, map it all out. But we can't map out when your daughter gets married, and we can't map out when your son graduates from his master's program and you actually physically have to be there together and be on your best behavior and not create a generational chain breaking effect of all the generations to come. It's possible to eliminate that. And those cases where that's eliminated and we are restoring the future generations instead of breaking them down are the cases out of mediation and collaborative. And that's just my personal experience and my professional experience for sure.
Yeah. Robin, how have you seen it make a difference in your clients' lives?
I mean, I think it's a mental health game changer, right? I feel like my clients during the process are more stable. Like divorce is one of the foremost, most jarring life events. And I think someone in the collaborative process, it fosters their mental health. And we talk about their mental health and the need for them to get a therapist. It's a much more holistic process. I call it, if you've heard of conscious uncoupling, I call it the legal side of conscious uncoupling. So in conscious uncoupling, it's all when Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin made that famous, and it's about, that's the therapeutic side of how do you untangle a family. Collaborative is the legal mirror of that, in that it's holistic. We look at the law. We look at, what's the mental health issues, or does someone need time to process something before we have a conversation? I think if you were to look at a client going through collaborative and a client going through litigation, when they come out on the other side, they're two totally different outcomes. Even if they both come to settlement, collaborative fosters, as Ashley-Nicole so elegantly said, it fosters that next chapter. Like, how do you communicate with each other? And how do you set an example for your children so that they're not caught in the middle of that crossfire? And we talk about, it's not just the divorce, it's in the future too. So I think it is drastically different outcome from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah. And Ashley-Nicole, I think along those lines, what I hear is if you go through the litigation process, there are all kinds of other litigation pieces that happen after the divorce, but that rarely happens in collaborative. Is that accurate?
Well, I would say the opposite. I would say that in litigation, you don't get a voice. The judge is the only one that has a voice. The clients walk out and they say, what just happened? I don't understand. What about X, Y, and Z? I had a timed hearing. I didn't have control. I wasn't heard. Now I have all these things that I have to solve, and we didn't get the court to solve them because that's not what happens. The court can't solve everything. And I mean, we can't solve everything either. Don't misunderstand. But in the collaborative process, it's multidisciplinary. It's interdisciplinary. And so if the clients want to let the attorneys and the parties to solve other things, estate issues, tax issues, trust issues, complex issues, we get to do that. The clients have more of a voice. They have more power. They have more control. We get to help them do that. That's the problem solving part. That's the really fun part. And they have more buy-in. And so we get to deal with these housekeeping issues when it's done, as opposed to just walking out of court with a piece of paper and everybody goes, what's next? Well, we say, sorry, can't help you. So, collaborative is so broad because it's what they make it, and they are the people that we're helping and who it involves and their children and their needs. And court just doesn't get to do that. That judicial system just doesn't provide that. So, it's really beautiful because it is tailored and personal. And I think that's why it inspires me so much. And we just want people to know about it because we can help.
Yeah. So this is the Respectful Divorce Podcast, and we're doing this ahead of Divorce with Respect Week, which is coming up March 3rd through 9th. If each of you would, and Robin, we'll let you start. What does respect in a divorce look like?
Transparency, open and honest communication in a thoughtful and kind manner. Action versus reaction.
Yeah. Ashley-Nicole?
Yeah, I think it's modeling. I think it's, do unto others as you would like for them to do unto you. I think that really you want to perform in your divorce how you would want your children to have to go through it if they had to go through it. And I think that it's just a model.
Yeah. And Ashley-Michael, what does respect look like?
A new normal where everyone can be okay and affordable, efficient, where everyone has a voice and can be heard.
Yeah. So you all are members of the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network. What is NCCAN?
It's the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network, and it is a nonprofit organization in the state of North Carolina built to help divorcing couples find out-of-court resources so that they can maintain respect in their divorce process.
And we will put the link to that in the show notes as well. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you individually, what are the best ways of doing that? Ashley-Nicole?
You can reach us at A&R Law, and that's ANRlaw.com. And, or you can find us on any of the social media stuff. We also have A&R Co. Consulting and Michael and Russell as well.
Okay. Robin, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
roadtoresolution.com, all spelled out. NCCAN website. Also, you can find me on the Charlotte Collaborative Divorce Professionals, CCDP website.
And Ashley-Michael, best way to get a hold of you?
So you can Google michaelandrussell.com, our website, Michael and Russell. You can Google my name, Ashley-Michael. And also our phone number is 910-255-5722, and our social media handles at Michael and Russell.
Okay. And we will put all of those things in the show notes. Thank you all for joining us today on the Respectful Divorce Podcast.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
This was great. A lot of fun.
This important programming note, Divorce with Respect Week is March 3rd through 9th. During Divorce with Respect Week, you can talk with lawyers, divorce coaches, divorce financial experts for free. To learn more about the divorce process and your options, simply go to divorcewithrespectweek.com to find professionals near you. That's divorcewithrespectweek.com. I'm Tim Crouch, reminding you that collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knots.